Hi, I'm Robert Llewellyn and I've been driving electric vehicles for the last 8 years. There's loads of benefits to driving electric cars, like Jaguar's new IPACE. But one of the benefits you might not have considered is the opportunity to save money. Jaguar estimate that you could save over £1,100 in the UK every year compared to driving a petrol car like this one. So let's put it to the test. So, Jaguar has just released the Go IPACE app. Now, the idea is that you download and run the app in the background on your smartphone for a week or two while you drive your petrol or diesel car, and then it uses all of this data to help you understand if an electric vehicle could suit your commute and lifestyle. Now, the app automatically tracks all of your journeys using the phone's location services. It analyses the distance you've travelled, your speed, and environment such as temperature and gradient, and the routes that you take most often. Users can enter the real-world fuel economy of their existing vehicle to calculate the real-life cost savings. The app also uses average electricity and diesel or petrol prices, so you get a really accurate estimate. Now, it can also tell whether you're walking or cycling, so only the correct data is collected. How's that for accuracy? So I've been driving this petrol car for the last week, and the Go IPACE app has been keeping track of all my journeys. So I've driven 364 miles in that time over 19 separate journeys. Now, if I'd been driving the Jaguar IPACE for the same distance, I would have only needed to charge it 2 times, which is a lot less than many people think. It would have cost me around £24 in electricity, as opposed to the £66 I spent fueling the petrol car. Given that the average daily commute is around 30 miles, and with the IPACE's range of 298 miles, most people will only need to top up once or twice a week. So over 10,000 miles, this translates to an annual saving of over £1,100. And by driving an electric vehicle, I know I could save even more. Across the world, EVs enjoy unique benefits, including government grants towards the vehicle and the wall box, zero annual taxation, access to car sharing lanes, free parking, and exemptions from congestion charges. The Go IPACE app is an indispensable tool because it's based on your own real-world journey data. So there's no better way to see if an electric vehicle can fit into your life. I think there's an enormous amount of people who are very worried about swapping over to an electric vehicle. They think that it's going to run out in the middle of the night when they've got 2 kids in the back and there'll be nowhere to charge it. They think it's going to cost them a fortune because they had to throw the batteries away after 2 years. Loads and loads of myths have been casually tossed about electric cars, and I'm speaking very much from experience from driving now hundreds of thousands of miles in electric cars that just isn't the case. It will warn you well before you run out. You've got to be, determined to run out. So the Jaguar's Go IPACE app is really simple to use. You download it onto your phone and it just records your journeys. That's all it does. And it will show you how often you'd have to charge the car and how much it would cost you. And you will soon work out that you'll save a lot of money driving an electric car. That's one thing. And also that you won't need to be stopping and panicking and charging it all the time when you're driving around. The vast majority of us, literally 95% of us, drive under 20 miles a day. You will be charging the car once every 2 weeks. It just gives reassurance for people who've never experienced an electric car that it is capable of doing the job you want it to do. In terms of public charging infrastructure, we're getting prepared, but there are far more places to charge now than there were, for instance, 5 years ago. I mean, seriously more, as in hundreds of thousands. The United States has a rapidly growing charging network over the whole country. China, you can't build a car park in China without an electric car charging point. It's a new law that's been passed, so it's definitely coming. So the Go IPACE app is really simple to use. You download it onto your phone, you just take it with you all the time as you would do anyway, and it just records your journeys. That's all it does. So you're driving, say, 20, 30, 40 miles a day, which is what most people do. It will record that and it will show you how often you'd have to charge the car and how much it would cost you. And you will soon work out that you'll save a lot of money driving an electric car. That's one thing. And also that you won't need to be stopping and panicking and charging it all the time when you're driving around. You'll need to charge it once a week. It's well within its capabilities, and I think it just gives reassurance for people who've never experienced an electric car that it is capable of doing the job you want it to do. I think there's an enormous amount of people who are very worried about swapping over to an electric vehicle. They think that it's going to run out in the middle of the night when they've got 2 kids in the back and there'll be nowhere to charge it. They think it's going to cost them a fortune because they have to throw the batteries away after 2 years. Loads and loads of myths have been casually tossed about electric cars, and only from experience. I'm speaking very much from experience, from driving now hundreds of thousands of miles in electric cars, that just isn't the case. That the car's technology, for one thing, tells you how much range you've got left. And it's very, very accurate, and it will warn you well before you run out. You've got to be, determined to run out. I've only done it once and I've made it run out to see what happened. It stops. But I had to drive for hours to make it run out. So that isn't a problem. And statistically, it doesn't happen. All the people who do drive electric cars don't run out on the side of the road. So there's quite a lot of fears about range anxiety that you will get. The first time you drive an electric car, you will have range anxiety. Everyone does, because you've been told you're going to have it. By about the 4th time, you won't even think about it. It won't even cross your mind. You just use the car as a car, and that's the end of it. I think the app it addresses them in a really simple and easy to use way, because a lot of people think, well, I drive 500 miles every 2 days and I drive to Scotland every year, and I can't use an electric car, it just doesn't have the range. And you use that app for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you'll go, oh, I don't actually drive anything like as far as I think. There's some people, travelling salespeople, or people who are travelling as part of their job, that will drive more. But the vast majority of us, literally 95% of us, drive under 20 miles a day. Well, if you're driving around 20, 25 miles a day, you will be charging the car once every 2 weeks. So what the app does is show you that you don't drive as far as you think. We all assume we drive much further than we think. So I think in this country we are getting prepared for the mass adoption of electric vehicles. We're certainly not ready yet, but there are far more places to charge now than there were, for instance, 5 years ago. I mean, seriously more, as in hundreds of thousands. So there's a lot of car parks that now have chargers in them. There's a lot of hotels, restaurants, cafes, supermarkets that have chargers in the car parks, and that makes a big difference. And so that's got to be rolled out to a much greater extent. But certainly things like the national grid have said very clearly they're completely ready and capable of charging 5 million electric cars today, and with a little bit of adaptation to the way the grid operates, they can charge more. So I don't think that's going to be a problem, and we just need more chargers. So the rest of the world, it really depends on which country you're talking about. So certainly most of Western Europe has got an amazing charging network all over every country. I know you can drive from the Arctic Circle in Norway to Gibraltar using electric car chargers, and people have done it. The United States has a growing and rapidly growing charging network over the whole country. Certain cities have amazing level of car charging, other ones less so, but it's being rolled out everywhere, and everyone can see that this is coming anyway. So there's a lot of legislation about new buildings, which if you build a new building that's got car parks, you have to have chargers fitted. China, you can't build a car park in China without an electric car charging point. It's a new law that's been passed, so it's definitely coming. I think the really big thing that manufacturers can do is to develop relationships with the charging companies, and because the grit that I see in the system at the moment is using public chargers, particularly in this country. Some countries it's mandatory that you have one tag on your car keys and you can use any charger. California is a good example of that. So it doesn't matter who runs the charger. You pay for the electricity, but it's much easier to access it. In this country I have a wallet full of, I think, 12 cards for different chargers, which is rapidly going out of fashion. That's how it started, and soon you'll be able to pay with a debit card, which is what everyone wants. And so that for a car manufacturer to facilitate for their customers an easy way of doing that, so i.e. one fob that charges everything, and I know that's something Jaguar are talking about, that you want to be able to access any charger wherever you find it and just plug in and not have to think about it. That's really important. So I'm not someone who's driven a great deal of Jaguars, but I'm someone who's driven a great deal of electric cars. And the first time I got on the IPACE, I think I said, this is nice. Because it's a beautifully made car, and regardless of what makes it go along, it's a real joy to drive. It's really easy to drive. It obviously goes like stink if you want it to, but you can drive it gently and really make it go a long way. It's really smooth and comfortable. The good clue for a gentleman of my age is when you get out of a car, whether you grunt or not. So quite a lot of cars, like when I get out, you do a bit of grunting. It just happens. It's the thing that happens with age. I didn't make the slightest gruntette getting out of an I-PACE. I got out, stood up and went, oh, it's a really, really comfortable car. And that's after driving for 2 or 3 hours. That's a really good sign. Beautifully designed, beautifully made, really competent machine.